what got me involved in it to begin with, if you remember, was we had, being here on the coast, we had the condo cases where we had 5 major condominium complexes. They were all built by the same general contractor, same developer, and they all had lawsuits going. The attorneys were all the same. We had 50 or 60 attorneys involved in it, and they came to me and they said, we cannot handle the paper aspect of this case. We've got these cases, we've got to be able to cut our cost, because the amended complaint alone in one of them was going to be 10,000 pages of copying to send out to everybody. And so we talked about, can we use email as a way for notification as opposed to paper notification to everybody. From that, I happened to contact AOC and said, you know, what's the possibility of us being able to do some things electronically? And that was when it was funny you should ask, and that's when I first found out about how AlaCourt, what turned out to be AlaCourt, was in the initial working stages, and so we were lucky enough here to be picked as a pilot county. Two most important things is the file space, because those 5 condominium complexes alone took up an entire ceiling to floor file cabinet just for those cases, because of everything that's been filed. 50 attorneys, 40-something parties. Now, not a one of those is in there in the clerk's office. They're all sitting on the computer, and I can pull every single thing up that was in that case, and that was from 6-7 years ago. This table over here was completely covered with files. We use blue color files for civil and red for criminal, and I would have stacks of blue and red files sitting there for me to work on. Now you can see I've got one, which is an old case that's come back on a post-judgment red file, so it's one old case that I have had to look up something in it. But I don't have any files now, and I don't have to take boxes of files home with me to work on. The second aspect is the speed that it's given the clerks. With the cutbacks we've had in the last few years, right before we went to AlaCourt, we were probably looking at 4 weeks, 5 weeks from the time a motion was filed with the clerk's office until it hit my desk. And then I would look at it, it'd get back to the clerk's office. It could be another couple of weeks before they could process it because of the volume that they had. Now, the joke right after we got going with this was I had a couple of attorneys saying, Judge, could you slow down a little bit, because you're ruling on motions before we get a chance to respond to them, because they were hitting my desk so quick. I just recently went to 2 monitors, so I'm learning how to work with this. And the benefit of this is when I come in the mornings, first thing I do is I turn on my AlaCourt. Of course, it opens up to the desktop, and I'll go directly to my motion queue. And I don't use the active motion screen personally as much, other than I do look down here, and I see I've got 3 motions here that, or 3 cases that are in red, which indicates to me I need to check and see what's going on, because that means they're past due whatever date I gave them for a ruling. Normally what I do is I go into the follow-up screen, which is where my staff sends both the civil and criminal cases over to the follow-up screen for me to look at, because there's a lot of formal matters, simple matters that my staff can handle for me. If it's a motion to continue and they've heard me talk about it and they know that the case is going to be continued, my staff has the authority to enter those kind of motions. Or sometimes they know that there's a particular motion that needs to be set for a hearing, so they go ahead and give it a hearing date. So those motions they handle for me. Everything else, they review it to see if it's something that I need to look at, and they move it over to the follow-up motion screen. So this screen is where I do most of my work in my office on a given day. All right, when I open up a motion, one of the things that's really helpful on the right-hand side is the motion opens up, which I can open it in a new tab to see it, so it's a lot easier for me to read. And then once I get a feel of what the motion's about, I can go back to, I guess, the activity part where I can actually rule on it. I can click here, whatever the disposition I want to do. If I decide I want to set it for a hearing date, I set the hearing date right here. Once I set the hearing date, I can reactivate it, which moves it back over to the active motion screen and highlights it in the yellow. One of the things I didn't mention earlier was on the active motion screen, the colors are really beneficial because if it's highlighted in yellow, that tells me that every motion that's filed in this case, for example, this case right here, there's two motions right there. There's a motion for summary judgment and a motion to strike. Both of them have hearing dates. And by the case being highlighted in yellow, that tells me there's no need for me to open that case up because I've already set the motions that are pending in that case. They're already set for hearing, so unless I need to go in and actually read that to be acquainted or reacquainted with it before it comes up for the actual hearing date. But if I go to my follow-up screen, up here, by being able to click on the case number, it opens up the entire case for me. I've got the general case information of who the parties are, the case number. It tells me what type of case. This is a medical malpractice case. This helps me a lot with parties. I can instantly go to parties and I can find out who are the attorneys that are involved in this case, because all I have to do is click on the party and it tells me right over here who the attorney is. Another important aspect is the consolidated case action summary. If there's something in particular I need to go back and look up in the case, and it's chronological, so the most recent information is at the bottom of the screen. I don't go to case action summary quite as much as I go to case images. I guess they're kind of a little bit of duplication because case images and case action summary have a lot of the same information. But with case images, when I click on show documents only, I can get only the documents that have been filed, and I can search and find a particular order. Here's an order that was filed back in October, the scheduling order. So I can look it up and see exactly what the requirements are and the time dates for the attorneys in this particular case. And it says 10/19/12. If I go over here to the consolidated case action summary, I go to 10/19/2012. There's the same scheduling order right there. It's the exact same order that I just looked at just a minute ago. So I can find it in two different places. And it also shows me right here when the lawyers occasionally they'll say, well, I didn't get that order. I can go right here and I can say, yeah, there's a copy of the notice that it went to you. And here's a copy of the notice that went to this lawyer. And then I can even find out if we sent a copy to the particular party or whether it just went to the attorney. So the postman forgot to deliver it to me or those things. It's not there because we've got the confirmation that the notice did go out or the copy of the order did go out to the lawyer or the notice. On the case action summary, one of the things is this is nothing but an electronic list of the same thing that was in paper it's the cover sheet that we used to have in our paper files, where when I got a file brought to me and I opened it up, there was a case action summary right there, and I could read down and try to find where a motion was filed or where an order was filed, and then I flipped through the file to try to find it. Well, I'm doing the same thing. I'm just doing it with the click of a button instead of having to flip through pages by going to the case action summary. But there's a lot of information right there, and sometimes that's information I don't really need. What I may need to do is just try to find a motion. And so with these buttons up here, I can go to whatever particular area I want to work on, such as I can go to the motion button. Now, this shows me that with all that was going on in this case right here with consolidated case action summary or whether I was on case images, there's only been 3 motions filed in this case. And so if I want to get all that other stuff out of the way, I can just go to the motion button, and there are the 3 motions, and I can tell that I denied one, I granted this one, and then this one's still pending. So that tells me I've only got 1 motion pending in this whole medical malpractice case that I've got to worry with. And I can work on it right here if I want to by just opening it up, and there's the motion that's been filed. And that's the same motion that was on the case action summary. It's the same motion that was on the case images button that I clicked on a minute ago, and it's the exact same motion under the motion cue that's sitting right there. They're all the same, so you can work off your motion cue if you feel comfortable doing that, or you can work off of the actual case if you're more comfortable doing that. You can work off a case action summary, you can work off the motion. Here's my civil docket from the other day. I entered an order from here because all you got to do is just read the buttons and click. You don't have to really know how to type that well. Here's an example of an actual case that I've got pending with a couple of motions. You notice it's in red because the other day the lawyers came in and argued this motion to continue with me. I heard their arguments and I told them I was going to grant it. So I just click on the motion. The right-hand screen opens up. It's their motion to continue the trial date. And I go up here to where it says pending, click on it, click on granted, update and generate order. It's a motion to continue. And I'm going to do create order just so you can see what an order actually looks like. It's an order, motion to continue, filed, and it tells you who it's filed by, and it's basically by all the defendants, and it's hereby granted. And then I double check my description to make sure that that's matching up right, and then I just click e-file. Order has been generated. It's gone. By the time we stop talking, the lawyers will have gotten that order. It has already hit their page. Now they've got a second motion here is a motion for summary judgment. Well, I know that I'm going to set that for a hearing because all my summary judgments are set for a hearing. That's under our rules, so there's no need for me to try to rule on this. So I go up here to setting date, and my next motion docket date is on the 19th of November. So I give it a court date, the courtroom. So I put in courtroom 5 and update without order. Motion has been updated. Let's click on the case, and I go to case images, or better yet, let's go to case action summary, which is a summary of what's going on in the case. Right down here, the motion to continue that I ruled on just, 2 minutes ago, there's the order right there. One of the ways we use it to prepare for trial is, like on the desktop, I can go in here. My next jury trial, for example, is November 5th, this coming Monday. The docket is set at 9 o'clock. I've got, obviously I'm not going to get to all these cases next week, but I've got all the cases set here so I can see, one, how many I've got, how long it's going to, get an idea of how long it's going to take. But the other benefit to this is, actually 2 weeks ago I called this docket and to find out how many of these cases were ready, how long each one was going to take, and get an idea of how to fit them in my 2-week term coming up. One of the things that when we call, we like to use in our office is the ability to export this to an Excel spreadsheet. I just clicked on the docket for Monday, and you can see on this other screen, I export it to an Excel spreadsheet. Now I can manipulate this as far as moving cases up or down. If they came in and told me that these cases were settled, we're able to come in here to Excel and just delete that case off the line and get a better idea of how many cases we've got. We can add our notes in here of what we're going to, how long that case maybe is going to take. We've got an idea. We can organize it by date so that we maybe try to get to our oldest cases first. We can make a note of which ones are in jail, the defendants are in jail, because we want to give them priority on getting their case heard. And we can, that's been real beneficial to us, is having that Excel spreadsheet ability to work with it, and it allows me to work with my staff with this. We were talking about my docket that I've got, a criminal docket that I've got set for Monday, and one of the things I can do with this program is I open the docket up, and there's the basic information that I've got on every case, which is very consistent with what we had with our old paper docket that we would bring in, a lot of the same information. But then with the plus sign, I can open it up and expand a whole lot more information where I've got now any outstanding warrants that he may have had. I can go down here with a click of a button, and this one was already open, but right here I can scroll down to see all of the priors that he had. And of course, you notice that this is a different county. That tells me we're right across the bay from Mobile County. So he's been pretty active over in Mobile, even though this particular case is over here. He's also got another neighboring county there. So I can check and see some criminal history on him. I can go up here without having the file. I can just click the paper file, which I don't need. I can click right here and go directly to the case information, which tells me who his defense attorney is, tells me who the particular prosecutor is that's prosecuting the case. I've got his photo up here, so when I click on it, I can make it large enough that I can actually see who it is. This docket, compared to the old docket, gives me a lot more enhancements at my fingertips that I used to have to get someone go find the paper file for me, bring it to me, and then even then, some of this information, there was never a photo of anybody in a paper file or on our old system, DOS-based system. There was the priors you couldn't find in the paper file, so you'd still had to go to the computer to find it under the old system, and you may or may not find it because you noticed on this particular defendant, he's been in multiple counties. So I'd have to do a complete statewide search. We work on a motion docket, whereas as motions are filed, we don't specially set them. We set them on a docket, and the notices go out and the lawyers come in on that motion day, and then we hear the arguments on the motions, and then I rule. In the old days, in the paper world days, what happened was I had a paper docket, and I would try to make my notes as I sat in court. And one of my staff people would be in there with me and try to make notes too. After the motion day, if I granted it, denied it, or if I said I'm going to take it under submission, I would make that note. I would come back to my office. I'd have to sit down at some point in time, depending on whatever was waiting on me when I got back to my office. I'd have to sit down with my staff and say, okay, I granted or denied this one. We need to enter this order. Either I would type it up or my staff would type it up. They bring the order to me some days later, and I would sign the order granting, denying, or entering whatever specific order I had to do in the case. Sometimes it might be a week or two before we got everything done. Sometimes it might even be longer than that if it was a more complicated order. Well, today, when we go into court, I take my computer, my staff member takes her computer, and as I have the docket in front of me, and I still print an AlacourtPLUS paper docket off just to make some notes. I may hear a motion and I grant it. My staff member hears that. She enters the order right then that this motion, on the motion queue, she enters the order that it's granted. And it's funny that the lawyers sometimes, it pops up on their BlackBerry or on their iPhone as they're walking down the hall that they've already gotten the order. So one of the things that's really helped is I come back now from motion docket, and instead of having 15 or 20 motions or more that I've got to rule on, we came back earlier this week. We had motion docket, and I think I had 3. And the only reason I had 3 were because they were all 3 on motions that I couldn't rule on yet because I needed to go back and read the briefs, or the lawyers were submitting some additional legal argument to me before I could rule on them. So we're virtually through with our motion docket and have entered all our orders by the time we walk out of court. My particular proposed order radio button is flashing right now, flashing red. That tells me that since the last time I opened that, some proposed orders, either one or more proposed orders, have been filed. So the radio buttons help a lot because that tells me that something recently has occurred in that particular screen, such as if new motions are filed, then my motion queue button will flash the proposed orders. We've got emergency relief button if somebody files a temporary restraining order and they need emergency relief on it. It'll be logged in that way, and that'll start flashing, and I'll know that there's something that I need to look at immediately. So there are just so many different things that we've just touched the tip of the iceberg with what you can do with AlacourtPLUS, depending on how advanced or elementary you may be on a computer. I mean, we've got judges that and Jays that run the spectrum of, they could almost write the program themselves, to those that really you got to show them how to turn a computer on. And that's okay. That's what's great about it, is you don't have to know how to do certain things in order to be a judge. You need to be a judge, and this system helps you be a judge easier, rather than you having to get to a certain level of expertise in the IT industry or career in order to be able to use it. Because we've got judges that don't touch it, but they just simply give the notes to their staff, and their staff actually physically enters the order. And that's fine too. I mean, that works just as well as someone that sits here all day that is so good on a computer, they don't even need staff people in order to enter their orders for them.